The room is a universe of glass and steel suspended 70 floors above the city. Lion is one of those footsteps. She moves with unpracticed economy, her black uniform a shadow against the panoramic blaze. Her sole focus is the condensation on a water glass, the precise angle of a fork. At the head of the long, obsidian table sits Marcus Thorne. They are celebrating the imminent signing of the Atlas-Shenzhen merger, a $100 million deal that will reshape the global. Lion is refilling the water glass of a junior analyst, her movements fluid and unobtrusive, when Thorne's gaze snags on her. A slow, predatory, he picks up a thick document bound in a leather folder, the contract, and the heavy, gold-plated fountain pen lying. "Gentlemen," he booms, his voice dripping with theatrical amusement. "We've had our best legal minds on this for 6 months, but I believe in fresh eyes, a new perspective." He turns his gaze directly to Lion. She is still holding the crystal water pitcher, her posture unchanged, but she can feel the sudden shift in the room's energy. Every eye is on her. The quiet hum of conversation has died. She has become the center of a joke she hasn't yet heard. Thorne slides the heavy contract across the polished black surface. It stops just short of the wine glass she was about to reach for. The gold pen rolls slightly and comes to rest beside it. "Here," he says, his voice loud enough for every corner of the room to hear. "You look smart. Win this for us." A beat of stunned silence, and then it comes. A wave of chuckles, first from the men closest to him, then spreading around the table. It isn't kind laughter. It's the cruel, dismissive sound of a pack asserting its dominance. It's the laughter of men who see her not as a person, but as a prop. A nameless, faceless uniform to be used for a moment's entertainment before she recedes back into the wallpaper of their lives. Lion doesn't move. The water pitcher feels impossibly heavy in her hand. A flush of heat, sharp and sudden, climbs her neck, but her face remains a mask of professional calm. It's a mask she has perfected over years of enduring casual cruelties, of being looked through, of being spoken over. She has learned that stillness is a shield. To react is to give them a bigger victory. One of the lawyers, a man with a pink, fleshy face, leans forward. "Go on," he urges, grinning. "Give it a raid. Maybe you'll find a loophole our Harvard boys missed." More laughter. Thorne leans back in his chair, folding his arms. He is enjoying the spectacle immensely. He has successfully transformed a multi-billion-dollar negotiation into a stage for his own petty amusement, and she is his unwilling star. The document lies before her, an insult printed on expensive paper. The gold pen glints under the recessed lighting, a scepter of a kingdom she is not meant to enter. Her training, her instincts, everything screams at her to smile politely, murmur a quiet apology, and retreat, fade back into the shadows where she belongs. That is the safe move. That is the expected move. But as her eyes fall on the 2 columns of text on the open page, one in crisp English, the other in elegant, complex Mandarin characters, something inside her shifts. It's a flicker of an old fire, a muscle memory from a life she had meticulously buried. The men see a waitress, a black woman in a servant's uniform, frozen in the spotlight. They have no idea who is actually standing in their midst. They have no concept of the storm gathering behind her calm, unblinking eyes. The question hangs in the air, a silent, searing judgment. Would you endure this? For a moment, the entire 70-floor skyscraper, the city lights, the clinking glasses, it all fades away. There is only her, the contract, and the suffocating weight of their amusement. The silence in the room stretches, thin and taut. Lion's world has narrowed to the polished black expanse of the table, the mocking white of the contract, and the cruel, expectant faces reflected in its glossy surface. Her hand, still holding the water pitcher, is perfectly steady. Years of balancing trays laden with delicate glasses, of navigating crowded rooms without a single spill, had forged a stillness in her that went deeper than muscle. It was a stillness of the soul, a necessary armor. Thorne's smirk widens. He enjoys this, the slow, simmering humiliation. "Cat got your tongue?" he asks, leaning forward and steepling his fingers. "Don't be shy. We value all input here at Atlas Corp." The fleshy-faced lawyer beside him, a man named Henderson, decides to amplify the joke. He stands, walks around the table, and stops beside Lion. He's too close, invading her space with the scent of expensive cologne and entitlement. He reaches out and taps her simple plastic name badge, pinned neatly to the lapel of her uniform. "Liane," he says, deliberately mispronouncing her name, drawing out the syllables as if she were a child. "Mr. Thorne is offering you a promotion. From water pourer to chief legal counsel. It's the American dream, isn't it?" The laughter this time is louder, more confident. They have their target, and she is not fighting back. Liane's gaze remains fixed on the table. She can feel Henderson's breath on her cheek. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't even blink. If that happened to you, what would you do? Would you tolerate this kind of public disrespect, this utter erasure of your humanity for a cheap laugh? Her eyes drift from their mocking faces to the objects on the table. The contract itself is a monolith, its sheer thickness a testament to the labyrinth of clauses and conditions designed to protect men like Thorne. And beside it, the pen. It's not just a writing instrument. It is a statement. A solid, gleaming cudgel of gold. She imagines the weight of it in her hand, the cold, alien feel of it. It's a pen designed to sign empires into existence and sign people like her out of it. It feels less like a tool and more like a weapon, and right now, it's aimed directly at her. A young man at the far end of the table, the same junior analyst whose glass she was filling, shifts uncomfortably in his seat. He's new, his face still holding the soft edges of someone not yet hardened by this world. He avoids her gaze, staring down at his plate as if it holds the secrets of the universe. He is embarrassed for her and perhaps for himself, for being a silent party to this cruelty. The moment must end. Thorne is getting impatient, his amusement souring into irritation. Liane knows she has to break the spell. Slowly, deliberately, she places the crystal pitcher on the table. The sound is almost inaudible, but in the charged silence it feels like a thunderclap. She raises her eyes, not to Thorne but to a point on the glass wall just over his shoulder. "My apologies, sir," she says, her voice a low, even murmur. It is the voice she is paid to use, neutral, respectful, and utterly devoid of personality. "I wouldn't want to spill anything on such an important document." She gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod, the kind of deferential gesture she has performed 1,000 times. It is the perfect response. It is meek, it is apologetic, it reinforces her role as a servant concerned only with the physical neatness of their world. It gives them the victory they wanted. Thorne chuckles, satisfied. "Wise decision," he says, waving a dismissive hand. "Back to it then." As Liane turns to retreat, the junior analyst catches her eye for a fraction of a second. His look is a mixture of relief and something else, pity maybe. As she passes behind his chair, he leans his head back slightly and whispers, so low only she can hear, "Just smile and walk away. Don't make a scene." It isn't a piece of advice, it's a warning. It's a confirmation of the unwritten rulebook of this place. Her role is to be invisible, and any deviation from that role will have consequences. The threat is subtle, but it hangs in the air, as cold and sharp as the glass encasing them. She is a ghost in their machine, and ghosts are not supposed to speak. She almost makes it. She almost fades back into the choreographed dance of the service staff, a shadow retreating to the periphery. Her hand is already reaching for an empty breadbasket on the sideboard. In another 10 seconds, the spotlight of Thorne's cruel boredom would have moved on to someone else. The incident would become just another scar, invisible to everyone but her. But Thorne is not done. He is a predator who likes to play with his food. "Ah, but wait," he calls out, and Liane freezes, her back to him. The entire room freezes with her. "You didn't give us your opinion. I insist." He says it with a jaunty arrogance, but there is an undercurrent of steel in his voice now. It is no longer a request. It is a command, disguised as a joke. To refuse again would be an act of overt defiance, a transgression the junior analyst just warned her against. She would no longer be a compliant servant. She would be a problem. Slowly, Liane turns back to face the table. Her heart is a cold, hard knot in her chest. She can feel the eyes of her fellow staff members on her from the edges of the room, a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. She is one of their own, and she has been pulled into the lion's den. "Come on," Thorne insists, gesturing again to the contract with his gold pen. "Take a look. It's a historic document. The least we can do is let the help have a peek." He is trapping her. If she refuses, she is insubordinate. If she accepts, she prolongs her own humiliation. He has left her no good choices. This is the moment, the pivot point where the story could go one of two ways. What would you do next if trapped like this? Bound by the suffocating pressure, she walks back to the table. Her steps are measured, her expression unreadable. She stands before the document, a sacrifice before an altar. The Mandarin characters leap out at her, stark and familiar against the page. They feel like a secret language, a piece of her hidden self laid bare in this hostile environment. "Just a glance, sir," she says softly, her eyes scanning the page. Her mind, a precision instrument honed by years of rigorous legal and linguistic training, kicks into gear. It's an automatic reflex she can't turn off. She isn't just looking, she is reading. She is analyzing. Her eyes flick down the English column, absorbing the dense legalese: indemnification, arbitration, liability. Standard boilerplate language for a deal of this size. Then her gaze shifts to the Mandarin column. It flows, a mirror image of the English text, until it doesn't. She stops. Her breath catches in her throat, a tiny, silent gasp. It's there. Clause 9, Section C. A sub-clause detailing liability in the event of on-site operational failure. Her eyes dart back to the English text. It's clear. Liability for said failure and any resultant damages will be borne by the purchasing entity, Atlas Corp. Standard risk assumption. But the Mandarin version, it's different. The structure is nearly identical, a masterful piece of deceptive translation. The change is almost microscopic. A single character swapped for another with a similar look but a devastatingly different legal meaning. The character for corporation or entity has been replaced with the character for contracted personnel or on-site staff. Her blood runs cold. It's a trap. A brilliantly vicious, perfectly hidden trap. In the version the Chinese delegation would read and sign, all liability for equipment failure, for accidents, for anything that goes wrong on the ground would not fall on the billion-dollar corporation. It would fall on the truck drivers, the warehouse workers, the janitors. It would fall on the service staff. It would fall on her colleagues, on people like Maya. She looks up from the page, and for the first time she meets Marcus Thorne's eyes directly. Her placid professional mask is gone. In its place is something else, something he doesn't recognize. Something hard and knowing. He thinks he's playing a game with a waitress. He has no idea he just handed the smoking gun to the only person in the room capable of seeing it. She now knows this isn't a joke. This is a conspiracy to commit corporate fraud on a massive scale, with the most vulnerable people as the designated scapegoats. And she cannot, will not, let it happen. The signing is scheduled for 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. The countdown has begun. She is no longer just a witness to a moment of casual cruelty. She is the custodian of a dangerous truth. Lion manages her escape with the same quiet grace she does everything else. She murmurs something about the importance of the document being in good hands, gives another one of her slight, deferential nods, and retreats to the periphery before Thorne can devise another amusement. The conversation at the table resumes, the small drama already forgotten by the men who created it. For them, it was a momentary diversion. For Lion, the world has tilted on its axis. The rest of the evening is a blur of automatic movements. She clears plates, refills glasses, and responds to requests with the placid efficiency of a machine. But behind her eyes, her mind is racing, rereading the treacherous words of Clause 9C, analyzing the audacity of the deception. It was no mistake. The phrasing was too clever, too specific. It was designed by a lawyer who was fluent not just in the language, but in the art of weaponizing it. As the event winds down and the guests begin to depart, she sees him, the official translator for the Shenzhen delegation. He's a man in his late 50s named Mr. Chen, with a kind, weary face. He is standing near the elevators, speaking rapidly into his phone in Mandarin, his brow furrowed with frustration. He keeps repeating a specific phrase related to intellectual property transference, but he's using a slightly archaic term. It's not wrong, precisely, but it lacks the nuance of modern corporate law. Lion is clearing a nearby tray of champagne flutes. This is her chance. She can't approach him directly. That would be a breach of protocol a dozen times over. She has to be clever. She has to be invisible. She walks past him, her path taking her within inches of where he stands. As she passes, she doesn't look at him. She keeps her eyes forward as if talking to herself or humming a tune under her breath. Jishi Chengquan Juanrang de Fande Gaojian, she murmurs the phrase in perfect, formal Mandarin, her pronunciation crisp and unaccented. It's the correct, modern legal term for reverse engineering of transferred IP. Mr. Chen stops talking mid-sentence. He slowly lowers his phone, a look of utter astonishment on his face. He turns and looks directly at her, or rather at the back of her retreating uniform. He saw her lips move, he heard the flawless, technical Mandarin, but his brain struggles to reconcile it with the image of a catering waitress. "Excuse me," he calls out, his voice hesitant. Lion pauses, turning back with an expression of polite inquiry as if she were any other service worker being hailed. "Yes, sir." "Was that you?" he asks, his eyes searching hers for some sign of comprehension. "Did you just speak?" Before she can formulate a response, her manager, a harried man named David, swoops in. He sees a waitress stopped in the middle of the floor talking to one of the most important guests. In his mind, this is a fire to be extinguished. "Is there a problem here?" David asks, positioning himself between Lion and Mr. Chen. He smiles obsequiously at the translator. "I'm so sorry if she was disturbing you, sir." He turns to Lion, his smile vanishing, replaced by a tight, angry glare. "Get back to the kitchen. Now," he hisses under his breath. "Stop bothering the guests." She gives a silent nod and walks away without a backward glance. The small win, the flicker of connection and dawning respect in Mr. Chen's eyes is immediately snuffed out. She is once again relegated to her role, pushed back into the box they have built for her. But as she walks toward the swinging doors of the kitchen, she hears Mr. Chen say one more thing to her, retreating back, a quiet, wondering question spoken in Mandarin. "Nai shi shei. Who are you?" The staff locker room is a cramped, windowless space in the building's underbelly, a world away from the penthouse glitter. It smells of bleach and tired feet. It's here that the invisibility cloaks are shed, where weary smiles can finally drop, and the weight of a 12-hour shift can settle into aching shoulders. It is also where Lion finds Maya. Maya is barely 20, a recent immigrant from a small village outside Guangzhou. She works as a kitchen assistant, her hands perpetually raw from detergents, her English still hesitant and heavily accented. She is the embodiment of the people Clause 9C was designed to crush: hopeful, hardworking, and utterly vulnerable. Tonight, she is sitting on a small bench, her shoulders slumped in defeat. In her lap is a copy of the new standard employment contract the catering company is making everyone sign. It's a dense, intimidating document, and Meyer is staring at it with wide, terrified eyes, trying to decipher the English text with a cheap translation app on her phone. The app is failing miserably, turning complex legal clauses into nonsensical gibberish. Lion sits down quietly beside her. She doesn't say anything at first, just allows her presence to be a calm, steadying force. "It is difficult," Lion says finally, her voice soft. Maya jumps, startled. She looks up, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. "They say we must sign by tomorrow," she whispers in a frantic mix of English and Mandarin. "They say if we break anything, if a guest gets sick, it is our fault. We have to pay." "Is that true?" Lion looks at the document. It's a junior version of the Atlas Shenzhen contract, filled with the same kind of predatory, one-sided clauses. It's a system of exploitation that runs from the very top to the very bottom. Instead of answering directly, Lion takes the paper from Maya's trembling hands. She points to a specific paragraph. "This part here," Lion says, switching to flawless, gentle Mandarin. "It's like a big, heavy blanket. They want you to think it covers everything. But a blanket can have holes. The trick is knowing where the holes are." She begins to walk Maya through the contract, not as a lawyer, but as a teacher. She uses simple analogies, comparing a liability clause to a promise you make a friend, an arbitration agreement to asking a wise village elder to settle a dispute instead of shouting in the market. For the first time all night, the terror in Maya's face begins to recede, replaced by a dawning understanding. You know these words," Maya says, her voice full of awe. "Like a scholar." "I read a lot," Lion says simply, avoiding the deeper truth. Maya looks down at her own hands, then back at Lion. "They told me if anything goes wrong with the big deal upstairs, the bosses will be angry. They will look for someone to blame. They said it is always the newest ones who get blamed." Her voice drops to a whisper. I am so scared of being sent back. Lion feels a fierce, protective anger rise within her. This is the human cost of Marcus Thorne's game. It's not about numbers on a balance sheet. It's about this young woman's entire future, her hopes, her fears. This is who she is fighting for. She places a reassuring hand on my shoulder. The girl is trembling slightly. Listen to me, Maya, Lion says, her voice firm but kind. You just do your work. You do it well like you always do. Don't be afraid. She pauses, making sure the young woman is looking her directly in the eyes. I won't let that happen. It's a promise. And as she says it, Lion feels the last of her own hesitation burn away. This is no longer just about exposing a fraud or fighting a principle. It is a moral obligation. She has to protect this girl. She has to protect them all. Proof. That's what she needs. A gut feeling, a moral certainty. Those are worthless in the world of men like Marcus Thorne. They operate in a world of signed documents, of evidence, of plausible deniability. To fight them, she needs to enter that world armed with their own weapons. Her service ID badge, the one Henderson had mockingly tapped, is a low-level pass, but it grants her access to the building's service corridors and back offices, even late at night. The catering company has a small, shared office on the 25th floor, a drab, functional space with beige cubicles and humming copy machines. It's here that the administrative staff process the paperwork for their events. It's here that she hopes to find the trail. The office is deserted, the only light coming from the glowing green display of a large industrial printer and copier. Lion moves silently through the space, her senses on high alert. She goes to the recycling bin beside the copier. It's overflowing with the detritus of a busy day, misprinted menus, old schedules, and reams of discarded paper. It's a long shot, but corporate lawyers are arrogant. They believe their trash is just trash, that no one would ever think to look, let alone understand what they were looking at. She begins to sift through the papers, her fingers moving with a surgeon's precision. And then she finds it. A series of draft pages, marked up with handwritten notes in red ink. It's an earlier version of the Atlas Shenzhen contract. She smooths the crumpled pages out on a desk. Here it is. The proof. The documents show the translation history. An initial, faithful translation of the English contract into Mandarin, with Clause 9C perfectly matched. Then, a second set of pages with a handwritten note in the margin from someone initialed H. Henderson. The note is chillingly simple. Revise 9C per MT's directive. Use the personnel variant for the domestic draft. Keep English original for the international file. MT. Marcus Thorne. It's all there in black and white and red ink. It was a deliberate, calculated act of deception. They had created two versions of the truth, one for the American lawyers and regulators, and another for the Chinese partners, with the assumption that the linguistic gap would hide the discrepancy. They built a safety net for themselves, and a cage for the workers, using a language they assumed no one of power or importance would ever bother to double-check. It was the perfect crime, hidden in plain sight. Lion takes out her phone and, with steady hands, photographs every single page, every damning note. The digital files are her ammunition. The trap has been identified, mapped, and documented. Now, she just has to figure out how to disarm it without getting blown apart in the process. The question echoes in the silent, sterile office. Have you ever seen a rule used like a weapon? A clause twisted from a shield into a sword? That's what this was. It was the sophisticated, bloodless violence of the powerful, a quiet devastation hidden in the fine print. And Lion now held the evidence of it in the palm of her hand. Armed with the proof, Lion knows her next move must be precise. Going directly to Thorne or the board is suicide. She needs an intermediary, someone on the inside who has just enough of a conscience to be swayed, but not so much power that they are complicit in the scheme. Her mind immediately goes to the young junior analyst at the table, the one who had looked away in shame. His name, she recalls from the place card, is Arthur. She waits until the following morning, a few hours before the scheduled signing. She finds him grabbing a coffee in the building's sleek, minimalist cafe. He looks exhausted, his tie already loosened. When he sees her approaching, a flicker of panic crosses his face. "I need to talk to you," Lion says, her voice low and urgent. He glances around nervously. "This isn't a good place." He leads her to a small, empty alcove overlooking a sterile corporate plaza. "Look," he says, his voice strained. "About last night, that was out of line." "What Thorne did." "This isn't about last night," Lyon says, cutting him off. She gets straight to the point. "It's about Clause 9C of the merger agreement. The Mandarin translation has been deliberately altered to shift liability onto the service staff." Arthur's face goes pale. He looks at her as if she's just confessed to a murder. "What are you talking about? How would you even know that?" "That doesn't matter," she says. "What matters is that it's true, and I have proof." She shows him the photos on her phone. He stares at the images, at Henderson's damning handwriting, at the two versions of the clause side by side. The color drains completely from his face. He's not a monster. He's just a cog in a monstrous machine, and he's seeing the machine's true nature for the first time. "Oh my God," he whispers, rubbing his face with his hands. "I had no idea." "You have to tell someone," Lyon presses. "Someone in compliance, someone on the legal team." Arthur looks up at her, his eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "Marcus Thorne, he doesn't just fire people, he destroys them. He will ruin you, he'll call immigration, he'll invent a criminal record, he'll sue you into oblivion. He's done it before. He will find a way to make this your fault." He explains Thorne's chillingly brilliant rationale. If the discrepancy is ever discovered, the company will claim it was a simple, regrettable translation error. Henderson will take a slap on the wrist, and they will find a scapegoat for the mistake. Some low-level translation firm, or perhaps even a catering waitress who was seen looking at the document and supposedly caused a confusing scene. They've already built their narrative. "This is not your fight," Arthur pleads with her, his voice desperate. "Please, for your own safety, you have to let this go. Just walk away. Pretend you never saw it." The door slams shut. The one potential ally she thought she had is terrified into silence. He's not evil. He is simply a man who has correctly calculated the cost of doing the right thing and found it too high. "What would you sacrifice to stay true to what you know is right?" Lyon looks at Arthur's panicked face and sees the reality of her situation. She is utterly, completely alone. No one is coming to help her. The system is not designed to protect her. It is designed to protect men like Thorne from people like her. She gives Arthur a single, sharp nod and turns away, leaving him in the alcove with his fear and his conscience. She walks out into the sterile plaza. The signing is in less than 2 hours. All is lost. The system has pushed back, her allies have vanished, and the trap is about to be sprung. She sits on a cold stone bench, the city's anonymous bustle swirling around her. For a moment, she allows herself to feel the crushing weight of her powerlessness. Then she straightens her back. Her face sets into a mask of calm determination. If the system won't help her, she will have to go around it. If no one will speak for Maya and the others, she will have to find a way to speak for them herself. She looks up at the gleaming, monolithic tower where the signing is about to take place, and she makes a quiet, unshakable vow. They would not win. Lyon knows she cannot storm the boardroom. A direct confrontation would be professional suicide, a dramatic but ultimately futile gesture. Thorne's lawyers would shred her testimony and paint her as a disgruntled, delusional employee. She needs a different key to open that door. She needs to be invited. Her mind flashes back to the translator, Mr. Chen, to his look of stunned respect, to his parting question, "Who are you?" He is her only leverage, a man who values precision and integrity, a man who now has a reason to believe she possesses both. She finds his contact information through the catering company's event manifest. Taking a deep breath, she sends him a short, carefully worded email. She doesn't reveal the fraud. That would be too risky, an accusation she couldn't back up in an email. Instead, she frames it as a matter of professional and cultural respect. "Dear Mr. Chen," she writes, "forgive my forwardness. I am the staff member you spoke with last night. In reviewing the public-facing summary of the agreement, I noted a potential point of cultural and legal clarification in Clause 9C that may not have been fully conveyed by a direct translation. It pertains to the assignment of on-site responsibility. Out of respect for the gravity of this partnership, I felt compelled to mention it. I am at your disposal should you feel a brief clarification is warranted before the final signing." It's a masterstroke of understatement. She doesn't accuse, she clarifies. She doesn't expose a crime, she points to a matter of cultural nuance. It's an appeal to his professionalism, his pride, and his ingrained suspicion of Western legal maneuvering. She hits send. The minutes that follow are the longest of her life. She has laid her only card on the table. 15 minutes later, her phone buzzes. It's an email from an official address at the Shenzhen conglomerate. It's not from Mr. Chen, but from his superior, the head of the delegation. Miss Hale, thank you for your email. Mr. Chen has spoken of your linguistic acuity. Our delegation agrees that complete clarity is paramount. We have formally requested a brief, open clarification session with the Atlas board to take place immediately prior to the signing. We have also specifically requested your presence to assist in this matter. A car is waiting for you at the main entrance. Her heart leaps. It worked. They took the bait. She walks back into the staff locker room, a place she thought she might be leaving for good, and changes. She sheds the black server's uniform, the symbol of her invisibility, and puts on a simple, professional navy blue dress she keeps for emergencies. It's not expensive, but it's clean, dignified, and sharp. It is her armor. When she walks through the main lobby, the security guards who have only ever seen her enter through the service entrance look at her with confusion. She doesn't meet their eyes. She walks straight to the black town car waiting at the curb, where a driver holds the door open for her. The ride up to the 70th floor is a silent, surreal journey. She is rising through the belly of the beast, no longer as a servant, but as an invited guest. She is not a ghost in the machine anymore. She is a wrench, aimed directly at its gears. She steps out of the elevator and is escorted to the familiar glass-walled boardroom. The atmosphere inside is tense and annoyed. The signing has been delayed and the American team is impatient. Thorne is at the head of the table, looking thunderous, and then he sees her. He sees the waitress from last night, now dressed in a crisp blue dress, being escorted into his boardroom by a representative of the Shenzhen delegation. His eyes narrow, a flicker of confusion and anger crossing his face. Lion walks to the empty chair that has been left for her. She sits, places her hands calmly on the table, and meets his gaze across the polished obsidian. She has entered the proving ground. What is the meaning of this? Thorne demands, his voice tight with controlled fury. He directs the question not to Lion but to the head of the Chinese delegation, a stern, older man named Chairman Y. We had an agreement. The signing was for 10 o'clock. And it will proceed, Mr. Thorne, Chairman Y replies, his English impeccable and cold. As soon as we have resolved a small matter of linguistic clarity. A detail our own translator feels requires a final review. He gestures towards Lion. We have invited Miss Hale to assist, given her demonstrated expertise. Thorne's eyes dart to Lion, then to Mr. Chen, who gives a slight formal bow. The trap is closing and Thorne can feel its jaws. He leans back, forcing a dismissive smirk. Expertise? She serves coffee. Let's get this over with. What's the issue? Clause 9C, Chairman Y says calmly. Regarding on-site liability, we would like it read aloud, in both languages. A palpable tension fills the room. The lawyers from Atlas Corp exchange nervous glances. Henderson, the fleshy-faced lawyer, begins to sweat. He was the architect of the deception, and he knows exactly what is about to happen. One of Thorne's lawyers, a woman named Carol, is instructed to read the English version. She does so, her voice clear and professional. Liability for said failure and any resultant damages will be borne by the purchasing entity, Atlas Corp. A murmur of assent goes around the American side of the table. It's exactly what they expect to hear. Thank you, Chairman Y says. He then turns his gaze to Lion. Miss Hale, if you would be so kind as to read the Mandarin version. This is the moment. Lion feels a tremor of fear, but she pushes it down, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She thinks of Maya's terrified face. She looks at Thorne's smug, arrogant smirk, and she finds her voice. She doesn't need to look at the document. She has memorized every character. Her voice, when she speaks, is not the meek murmur of a waitress. It is the clear, steady, and authoritative voice of an expert. She recites the Mandarin clause, her tone perfect, her enunciation flawless. The room is silent. To the Americans, it's just a string of foreign sounds. To the Chinese delegation, it's the language of their agreement. When she finishes, she pauses, letting the words hang in the air. Then she looks directly at Chairman Y. For full clarity, she says, her voice unwavering, May I offer the board a direct, literal translation of the version I just read into English? Chairman Y nods. Please. Lion turns her eyes from Y and fixes them on Marcus Thorne. She speaks to him and to everyone else in the room. The Mandarin text reads, liability for said failure and any resultant damages will be borne by the contracted on-site personnel. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. You could hear a pin drop. The American lawyers stare, their mouths slightly agape as they process the profound difference in the two sentences. Henderson looks like he's about to have a heart attack. The junior analyst, Arthur, looks down at the table, a strange mixture of terror and vindication on his face. Did you feel that shift? That was the sound of a universe reordering itself. The power dynamic in the room doesn't just shift, it shatters. In that one moment, Lion is no longer the waitress, the help, the butt of a joke. She is the most powerful person in the room. She holds all the cards. Thorne's face is a mask of disbelief, which quickly curdles into white-hot rage. His knuckles are white where he grips the edge of the table. Lion doesn't let up. She presses her advantage, her voice still calm, still lethally precise. So, Mr. Thorne, she says, the honorific now sounding like an accusation. I have a simple question for the board. Which version of this contract did you authorize? The one that protects your billion-dollar company? Or the one that assigns all legal and financial risk to my colleague Maya, who is currently washing dishes in your kitchen? Gasps ripple through the room. Literal goosebumps when she spoke. She hasn't just exposed a discrepancy, she has exposed the rot at the heart of their operation. She has given their crime a human face. Marcus Thorne, the master of the universe, the man who commanded rooms with his voice and his wealth, is speechless. He is cornered, exposed, and utterly defeated. And the person who did it is the one he never, ever saw coming. The boardroom erupts, not in shouts but in a flurry of hushed, frantic whispers and the frantic shuffling of papers. Chairman Y stands, his face a grim mask of fury. This meeting is concluded, he announces, his voice like cracking ice. The signing is suspended indefinitely pending a full investigation into what appears to be a deliberate act of corporate malfeasance. He gives Lion a deep, respectful bow before leading his delegation out of the room, leaving the Atlas Corp team in the wreckage. The fallout is immediate and catastrophic. Thorne is apoplectic, bellowing at his legal team, who are scrambling to control the damage. Henderson is already on the phone with his own lawyer. The $100 million deal is not just on hold, it is dead, and the potential for a massive international lawsuit looms. In the ensuing chaos, Lion quietly stands and walks toward the door. She has done what she came to do, but before she can leave, a different executive, the CEO of the hotel's parent company, a man named Richards who had been sitting silently at the end of the table, intercepts her. Thorne may have been the architect of the deal, but Richards is the owner of the building and the brand Lion has just saved from being collateral damage in a major scandal. Miss Hale, a moment, he says, his voice low and urgent. He steers her into a small, adjacent office, away from the imploding boardroom. His face is a mixture of awe and desperation. I have never in my 30 years in this business seen anything like that, he says, shaking his head. You have my deepest apologies and my gratitude. He pauses, then gets to the point. Name your price, a management position, head of guest relations for the entire hotel chain, a check right now. Whatever you want, it's yours. We need to make this right and we need to ensure this situation remains an internal matter. It's the offer of a lifetime. Hush money, packaged as a promotion. A golden ticket out of the service industry and into the executive suite. The world she had been fighting from the outside is now inviting her in. Lion looks at him. He's not a bad man, just a pragmatic one trying to mitigate a disaster, but he still doesn't fully understand. He thinks this was about her. Thank you, Mr. Richards, she says, her voice calm and measured. But I don't want a promotion. Richards looks confused. Then what? What do you want? What does real justice look like here? Is it a single person's advancement, or is it something more profound, more lasting? My price isn't a management desk, Lion says. My price is a policy. She makes her ask. It is not a request for vengeance against Thorne or Henderson. It is a demand for justice, a demand for systemic change. First, she says, I want a new company-wide rule. All employee-facing legal documents, including employment contracts and liability waivers, must be drafted in plain language and provided in a certified translation for any employee's native tongue. These documents must be certified not by your in-house team, but by an independent, third-party legal expert specializing in labor law. Richards listens, his eyes wide. Second, she continues, I want hazard pay. A permanent, non-negotiable salary supplement for all service staff who bear operational risk. The people in your kitchens, the cleaning crews, the valet drivers. Their work carries inherent risks and their contracts should reflect that. You need to insure them, not trick them into insuring you. It's a concrete, fair, and sweeping proposal. It's not about punishing the guilty. It's about protecting the innocent now and in the future. She is not asking for a reward. She is presenting him with a blueprint for a more just and equitable system. Richard stares at her, a dawning realization on his face. He had offered to buy her silence. Instead, she was offering him a chance to buy back his company's integrity. Faced with an international scandal, a torpedoed merger, and the quiet, unshakable resolve of the woman who held all the leverage, Richards and the board did the only thing they could. They agreed. The process was not instantaneous. It involved weeks of meetings with lawyers, HR specialists, and union representatives. But Lyon was there for every step of it. She was no longer a waitress. She was a consultant, a key stakeholder whose approval was necessary for the company to move forward. The result was the creation of a new section in the Corporate Governance Manual, a policy officially named Directive 7.4, the Equity in Language Mandate. The name was dry and corporate, but its impact was revolutionary. Unofficially, the staff just called it the Lyon Clause. The policy had 3 core tenets. First, the matched language mandate. All contracts and legal notices for employees had to be provided in parallel columns of English and the employee's primary language, with both versions being legally binding. Second, the Independent Verification Board. A new, external body was created, composed of labor lawyers and elected staff representatives, to review and certify every one of these documents before they could be implemented. This took the power to write the rules out of the hands of people like Henderson and placed it under impartial oversight. Third, the Risk-Adjusted Compensation Act. A new pay structure was implemented that provided automatic, tiered hazard pay for non-executive roles, directly acknowledging the physical and operational risks they undertook. The change wasn't just a vague promise written on a memo. It was a new, enforceable process with a clear line of accountability. The verification board had the power to veto any new policy. The head of HR was now responsible for ensuring compliance, with their bonus tied directly to the annual audit of the program. Lyon was asked to be the first staff representative on the independent verification board. She accepted. The CEO, Richards, announced the new directive in a company-wide town hall. He didn't mention the Atlas Shenzhen debacle directly, but everyone knew the context. He spoke of a renewed commitment to transparency, integrity, and the well-being of every employee. There was resistance, of course. Some department managers grumbled about the new costs and bureaucratic hurdles. They saw it as an expensive overreaction, but the path was now open. A fundamental crack had been made in the old foundation, and a new, stronger one was being laid. Would this change be enough in your workplace? For the people at the bottom of the pyramid in Richard's company, it was a seismic shift toward dignity and safety. The victory in the boardroom was a public one, a matter of policy and power. But Lyon's personal healing came later, in a place far from the polished tables and panoramic views of the 70th floor. It came in the noisy, bustling staff cafeteria in the building's basement. A few weeks after the new policy was announced, Lyon was sitting at a small table, quietly eating her lunch. She was no longer in her waitress uniform, but in the same simple business dress she'd worn to the board meeting. People still weren't sure what to make of her new role. She existed somewhere between management and staff, an unfamiliar figure in the rigid hierarchy of the hotel. Then Meyer approached her table. The young kitchen assistant was hesitant, clutching a small cup of tea. She placed it gently in front of Lyon. "For you," Maya said, her English still shy but her smile radiant. She didn't say much more. She didn't need to. Her eyes, full of profound gratitude and relief, said everything. You didn't have to, she whispered in Mandarin. Lion smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes. Yes, she replied softly in the same language. I did. That quiet moment of connection, of a promise made and kept, meant more to Lion than any public accolade. It was the affirmation that she had fought for the right reasons. A few moments later, another figure appeared at her table. It was Mr. Chen, the translator from the Shenzhen delegation. The deal with Atlas was dead, but his firm had been retained by the hotel for other projects. He had sought her out. He stood before her table and gave a formal, respectful bow. Nin yang yu jai da de wan zhengxing, you have great integrity, he said in Mandarin. Ji shi dui women soyu reign de zaren. It was a responsibility to all of us, she replied. He nodded, a look of deep understanding on his face. The world needs more scholars in unexpected places, he said, before bowing again and leaving. This was her closure. Not the applause of a crowd, not the fawning gratitude of the executives, but the quiet, dignified respect of her peers. The ones who understood the stakes because they lived them. It was in these quiet moments that her dignity, once so viciously attacked, was fully and truly restored. She hadn't just won a battle, she had honored her community. And in doing so, she had reclaimed the quiet strength of her own self-definition, whose voice helped you heal when no one clapped. For Lion, it was the voices of the people she fought for. The first meeting of the Independent Verification Board took place in a functional, well-lit conference room on the 15th floor. There was no obsidian table, no panoramic view. The room was designed for work, not for intimidation. At the table were two senior vice presidents, the head of HR, an external labor lawyer, and Lion. A nervous energy filled the space. The executives were navigating new terrain. For the first time, they were in a position where their decisions could be vetoed by a staff representative and an outside counsel. The power balance was new, and no one was quite sure of the steps. They were reviewing a new proposed set of safety protocols and liability waivers for the hotel's engineering department. The head of HR, a woman named Sarah, nervously presented the document. When she was finished, all eyes turned to the external lawyer, who gave his technical analysis. Then, the VPs offered their business-oriented feedback. Finally, Sarah turned to Lion. There was a moment of hesitation. It was one thing to create a policy, it was another to live it. Miss Hale, Sarah said, her tone respectful and genuine, what are your thoughts from the staff perspective? The question was a quiet acknowledgement of her expertise. They didn't ask the former waitress for her feelings. They asked the board member for her analysis. Lion leaned forward. She had done her homework, speaking with several of the senior engineers the day before. Thank you, Sarah, she began, her voice calm and confident. The language is much clearer than previous versions, which I commend. However, Section 4, concerning equipment maintenance schedules, places the sole responsibility for reporting on the on-duty engineer. Based on my conversations with the team, there's a concern that this creates a potential conflict if a manager pushes for faster turnaround times on room repairs. The engineer is caught between a safety protocol and a management directive. She didn't just point out a problem, she offered a solution. I suggest we add a clause requiring a mandatory co-signature from a shift manager on all maintenance deferrals. That way, the responsibility is shared, and the decision is documented at a higher level. It protects the engineer and creates a paper trail that encourages adherence to the schedule. Her analysis was clear, concise, and focused on collaborative safety. She wasn't grandstanding or acting as an antagonist. She was working as a partner, using her unique position to bridge the gap between the executive perspective and the on-the-ground reality. One of the VPs nodded slowly. That makes sense, he said. It's a smart fix. Recognition done right, agree. It wasn't fawning praise. It was a simple, direct acknowledgement of her competence. In that moment, a door had opened. It was a door for a new kind of conversation in the company, one where the voice of the person doing the work was not just heard but was considered expert testimony, a door for others like her to walk through. As the first board meeting concluded, the members gathered their papers. The new clause Lion suggested had been adopted, and the revised document was ready for official ratification. Sarah, the head of HR, slid a single sheet of paper across the table to Lion. It was her formal agreement to serve as the elected staff representative on the board, a contract outlining her duties and responsibilities. "If you'll just sign this, Lion, we'll be official," Sarah said with a warm smile. Lion reached into her bag and pulled out her own pen. It was a simple blue ballpoint pen, the kind that comes in a pack of 10. It was functional, reliable, and completely unassuming. As she uncapped it, Mr. Richards, the CEO who had sat in on the end of the meeting, stepped forward. He reached into his own breast pocket and produced an object that made Lion's breath catch. It was the gold fountain pen, Marcus Thorne's pen. After Thorne had been unceremoniously ousted from the Atlas board and had become embroiled in a dozen lawsuits, the pen had somehow been left behind in the boardroom, a relic of a fallen tyrant. Richards had kept it. "Please," Richards said, his voice earnest. He pushed the heavy gold pen across the table toward her. "Use this one, as a gift, a small symbol of what you've accomplished. You've earned it." The pen gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a solid bar of captured arrogance. It was the same pen Thorne had used to taunt her, the same pen that had lain beside the contract like a scepter. It was a symbol of his power, his world, his casual cruelty. For a moment, she remembered the weight of their laughter, the sting of Henderson's condescending tap on her name badge. She looked at the gold pen, then down at her own simple blue one. Did the object's meaning change for you too? A few weeks ago, that gold pen had represented everything she was not: wealth, power, and a license to be cruel. Now it just looked hollow, an empty symbol of a broken kind of power. Lion offered Richards a small, polite smile. She gently pushed the gold pen back toward him. "Thank you, Mr. Richards," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "but I prefer my own." She clicked her simple blue pen and signed her name on the line. The signature was clear and confident. Her pen, the one that cost less than $1, was the one that now carried the weight of real authority, the authority of earned trust and a hard-won integrity. The gold pen sat on the table between them, stripped of its magic, no longer a weapon or a scepter, but just a heavy, useless piece of metal. She was ready for the future, and she would write it on her own terms. Months later, the story has found its new, quiet rhythm. Lion is no longer a headline or a whispered legend in the hallways. She is simply a part of the building's new ecosystem, a quiet force of gravity that has subtly altered the orbits of everyone around her. The final scene is not in a boardroom. It's in the bustling, brightly lit human resources department on a lower floor. A new employee is at a desk, going through her onboarding paperwork. She is a young woman from Vietnam, her expression a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The HR representative is patiently walking her through her employment contract. The document is new. It's printed on clean, crisp paper, laid out in 2 perfect matched columns. On the left, the formal English. On the right, a flawless, certified translation in Vietnamese. At the bottom of the signature page is a small, unobtrusive line of text, verified under Directive 7.4 by the Independent Verification Board. The young woman reads the contract in her own language, her brow furrowed in concentration. She asks a question, pointing to the section on overtime. The HR rep explains it clearly, patiently. There is no confusion, no intimidation. There is only clarity. Lion walks by the open door on her way to a board meeting. She is not in a uniform, but in her simple, professional dress, carrying a leather-bound folio. She pauses for a fraction of a second, her gaze taking in the scene. She sees the matched columns of the contract, the focused expression on the new hire's face, the respectful dialogue. She sees the system working as it should. The young woman looks up and happens to catch her eye. She doesn't know who Lion is, or what she did. She just sees a calm, confident woman who offers her a small, encouraging smile. The woman smiles back, a flicker of shared understanding between strangers, and returns to her contract. Lion continues down the hall. The room has changed. The rules have changed. The quiet dignity in that small interaction is her true legacy. Sometimes justice arrives without applause. It arrives as a new clause at the bottom of a contract, as a question that can now be safely asked, as a smile exchanged in a hallway. The closing image is of Lion waiting for the elevator, her reflection captured in the polished steel doors. She is still, poised and ready for the work ahead. The city glitters outside the windows, but the real change, the one that matters, happen right here, inside these walls. How many quiet experts do we walk past every day, and what could our world look like if we finally stopped to listen?